Hey guys, Dave here again. Truth for Free video. This is part 2. Um, I was talking uh, just prior about um, whether or not Christians should honor, give honor to men via using religious titles, and and then I was talking also about agape love, which is kind of what I ended on. Um, and a conversation that Jesus was having with Peter, where he asked Peter if he loved him. And the word love is agape, which is a love that's far beyond the best love that man can give. It's way beyond that. And Peter's response is, "Yeah, I love you, Lord," and it was a different word in the Greek. It's the friendship love. In other words, Peter's saying, "I'm close to you. I'd do anything for you. I love you." Well, how much did Peter love him? At one point, he told Jesus, I'd give my life for you. I'd go to death itself for you. He says, all these others will forsake you, Lord, but I won't forsake you. And Jesus said, tonight you're going to betray me. And he did. 3 times he betrayed Jesus. Well, that's how far his love went. And Jesus said, if you're going to feed my sheep, then you have to agape me. And that's extreme love. That's love that lays everything down, sacrifices everything, seeks nothing for yourself. Doesn't matter. Even financially, you have to be willing to count the cost, forsake it all. This is a big thing that Jesus is saying to Peter. He's saying, these are my sheep. I want you to take care of them. I want you to keep them strong. Keep them running after me. But you can't do that if you're drawing them after you. If you're putting yourself in the middle. And I can't have somebody that's doing that, Peter. You have to be selfless. You have to lay everything down. That means you take no reputation. You take no title. You get nothing in this life for it. The only thing you get is the pleasure of knowing me and being able to serve my people. That's it. You don't get anything. You don't get anything. There's no promise of anything worldly, good from this. This is sacrificing it all, becoming the servant of all, taking the lowest place, washing the feet, doing what nobody else wants to do, and not making yourself prominent in the process. Behind the scenes, really. How did Jesus come? Jesus came really as the servant of all. The scripture says, Jesus himself said, I didn't come to be served, I came to serve, and to give my life as a ransom for many. And that's what Jesus did, man. He hung out with the unclean, the ones society called unclean, the ones that were diseased and sickly, that it was improper to touch those people. He hung out with the sinners. He didn't even have a place to lay his head. He didn't have, money. And, then he gives his life for people that hated him, that cursed him, that laughed at him. No fame, no glory. The Bible even says that there wasn't anything attractive about him that make people, about his appearance or anything. And yet, he was the lowest position. But look how the people followed him. He avoided them sometimes. He tried to get out of get away from them. A lot of times he'd perform a miracle and he says, don't tell anybody that I did this. He's like, never sought for himself, ever. What do these guys today do? Something good happens by their, if they've touched it some way, well, they're going to let everybody know. They're going to write a book about it. Have you ever been to one of these revival conferences? The guy will spend the entire service telling you about how God used him the last conference. Do you ever see the power of God actually manifested in the service? No. But you hear him talk about it, that it happened in it's always the last service, the last conference. What boggles my mind is people listen to these guys and they hear them repeating how great they are, all the great things God does in them. They hear it so much that somehow something happens in their brain and they think that all those great things happened at that conference. And they talk about it as if miracles happened when nothing happened. But the point is, these guys, they talk a false humility. But they're not humble at all. All they do is talk about themselves. All they do is talk about how God uses them. Sometimes all they do is preach on authority and why you need to be submitted to them. The church I came out of was heavy into this fathering doctrine. You got to have a spiritual father. They actually had one man came in, a guest pastor that came in, and he actually said, you can't be a son of God unless you're submitted to a pastor. You can't be a son of God without a man. This stuff is going around everywhere, and people are eating it up. They're being deceived. So don't tell me I got to honor somebody who comes to me and says, respect my title. I might have said this already, but Jesus said that's one of the things that the religious leaders like to be called is rabbi. The word rabbi means my honored teacher. And Jesus said, you can't do it. You're not allowed to follow that frame of mind. Don't take titles. If you want to sum up that passage in Matthew 23, you can sum it up like that. Jesus says, don't take titles. Follow my example. Become the servant of all. Everything comes back to love. Everything comes back to agape. And that's why Jesus told Peter, you got to love me. You have to agape love me. Otherwise, you don't get to care for my sheep. I'll handle it myself. And they ain't ever your sheep. We got pastors running around everywhere, so-called pastors, and they're all saying, my flock, my congregation. Where do they get that? In the Scripture, there's one congregation, and it's a spiritual congregation. The Bible calls us a house of living stones, one body, one faith, one Lord, who is Lord over all. We have one head. It's not the pastor, it's Jesus. Jesus said in John 10 that it will be one flock and one shepherd. These guys walk around, they call themselves the senior pastor. Well, there is a reference to that in the Scripture. It talks about Jesus, who is the great shepherd. Senior pastor, same word, same Greek word. And we have men taking that title to themselves. There's no such thing as a senior pastor in the Scripture. Yet we call men by this title. We give them the place that only Jesus has. And we let them exert authority over us. And we let them tell us that we're supposed to honor their position. This is the thing. If somebody really is walking in God's love and really serving, you don't need a title to recognize it. I mean, you got to be pretty dense to not be affected by genuine godly love. And when I experience genuine godly love, I am touched by it. And I do respect the gifts of God when I see them in operation. And I willingly submit myself to that kind of trustworthy example. I'll follow that. I can follow that. But I don't see it today. Most of these guys who say they're pastors aren't. Most of these guys who like these titles aren't. Jesus said, leave them alone. Follow me. So follow him. There you have it. Love you guys.